Hello, and welcome to episode 109 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. With Tron Lightcycle Run getting ready to open on April 4th in Tomorrowland at Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World, I think it's important to address something that we've hinted about for the past 2 years on the podcast. Tomorrowland is broken. It is broken in Disneyland in Southern California, and it's broken in Walt Disney World in Florida. Sarah Says will be joining me today to start our conversation about the outdated theme park land, which is supposedly based on the future. Of course, we'll also discuss how excited we are for Tron. The jokes have become ubiquitous about how long it has taken to construct this ride, but we're finally getting ready to ride it. We've seen cast member previews, annual pass holder previews. This is about to happen after so many years of waiting. Before we get started, I teased a new fundraiser in last week's episode. This month, I am joining with other Disney content creators to collect basketballs and soccer balls for Boys and Girls Club locations throughout the Orlando area. It would be a logistical nightmare to have everyone mail sports equipment to us, so here's our solution. We're asking for as many of our listeners as possible to purchase gift cards from Five Below or Dick's Sporting Goods and email them to orlandoballdrap1971@gmail.com by March 27th. That's orlandoballdrap1971@gmail.com. We'll then use all of the gift cards to load our cars with basketballs and soccer balls to drop them off to Boys and Girls Clubs. Because we have this email address, we'll be making sure to thank each and every donor personally, and we would be glad to mention you on the podcast if you would like that as well. I will be doing a number of things to try to promote this fundraiser and to encourage donations. We always try to have fun while we're also trying to make a positive impact. Make sure you're following me on social media. On Twitter, I'm at Rick_ear. On Instagram, it's at Rick Doherty, TGTT. And on TikTok, I'm at Tall Guy Talks Travel. Please also subscribe to the YouTube channel, Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. That email address for Five Below and Dick's gift cards once again, orlandoballdrap1971@gmail.com. Of course, the 1971 to celebrate the first year of Walt Disney World. Right now, let's welcome Sarah Says back to the show. Thanks for being here, Sarah.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here hanging out.
So we are going to tackle a subject that I think needs to be addressed more and more at both Walt Disney World and Disneyland. So this is a great topic for the two of us. It's topical because Tron Lightcycle Run is opening at Magic Kingdom officially on April the 4th. And we're going to talk about how much work needs to be done at both Tomorrowland in Walt Disney World and Tomorrowland at Disneyland. Both of these lands are incredibly outdated when you consider the theme is the future. And I think they have a lot of rides that aren't very good. A lot of rides that I definitely skip. And when the two of us went to Disneyland, I barely did anything in Tomorrowland.
Did you even walk into Tomorrowland? Like, I know I went before I left for like the end of my trip. I went and did single rider on Space Mountain. But did you even go into Tomorrowland while we were there?
The last night we were there, Friday night, I wanted to walk through Tomorrowland and just enjoy Tomorrowland at night, take some pictures of all the different ride signs and do all of the obligatory social media stuff. But I was not there to really do anything. I know that there are things that I like about Disneyland's Tomorrowland, and when I was there other times before the two of us went, I did more in Tomorrowland, but that was before I lived in easy access to Walt Disney World, and I could do those things at Walt Disney World. But we'll talk more about that as we continue. So first of all, let's talk about something that is not wrong with Tomorrowland in Magic Kingdom, and that is that they are doing this new Tron Lightcycle run. We have seen cast member previews, cast members inviting other people to ride the ride. We've seen social media influencers riding the ride, and obviously it is almost a 100% clone of the version in Shanghai Disneyland. So anybody who has seen people ride that one know a little bit about it. What are your thoughts on this ride, Sarah?
I think it looks amazing. Like, I think it looks super cool from the videos. I was bummed. I know we were talking a while back because I was like, oh my gosh, somebody finally posted a video. And they're like, because they even said it was a video. And I found out it was the one from Shanghai. And I was like, in the comments, somebody's like, that is not from Walt Disney World. What are you doing? And I was like, so bummed. But no, from what I've seen, I think it looks really cool. The ride it's going to be stinking fast, which I love fast rides. And it's kind of a little itty bitty breath of fresh air for Tomorrowland.
I have not ridden it yet as of recording of this episode, but I will say that I am not a big fan of drops. And from what I've heard from everybody who's ridden it in Shanghai and the people who've already ridden it at Magic Kingdom, the drop is about the same as Pirates. So it's not even
Pirates in Disneyland?
I'm going to guess because they're talking about it at Walt Disney World, they mean the drop in Pirates at Walt Disney World. But
okay, because I'm like, you survived California.
I didn't ask. Oh, yeah. It's not even a bad drop in California, even though it's a big drop there.
Yes.
This is a ride that I think is a thrill ride that people can enjoy if they don't like huge drops, if they don't like a lot of that intensity, but they do like the thrill aspect, which is, I'm definitely in that group. I do like a good thrill ride. I love Guardians of the Galaxy at Epcot. I even had fun when I rode Tower of Terror at Hollywood Studios, which I never thought would be the case, but you donated money to charity, all of our listeners, and I did it.
Yep.
So I like that. I think that just visually, it adds so much to Tomorrowland. When you see it at night, there were videos that people posted of the fireworks as one of the cars went past, and it's just so gorgeous. I think about how when creating Disneyland, Walt Disney wanted different layers of motion, where you could see the submarines in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and then you could see the bobsleds on the Matterhorn, and then you could see the gondolas going through the Matterhorn, and the monorail going past, just different layers of motion. And it really does bring that visual aspect to a land that was starting to look really, really ugly. So I like that aspect of it as well. This is going to be a big deal for Tomorrowland, and frankly, I think they need to find a way to get this or something similar to Tomorrowland in Disneyland. How do you feel about that?
I absolutely think there are two rides that I'm guessing we're going to talk about here in soon that I think could be completely gone, and we could totally put it in the spot of those two rides. But yeah, I think that it definitely is something that needs to come join us on the West Coast.
So I have heard from a 6'5", 300+ pound man that he was able to ride this. Now,
Awesome.
The problem seems to be more than a belly issue, much like Flight of Passage in Disney's Animal Kingdom. The issue isn't your upper body. The issue is your legs. Now, I have very, very muscular legs, and I have long legs. I'm tall. I'm 6'4". My ability to ride Flight of Passage depends solely on how big the sole is on my shoes. If I wear Hoka's, I can't ride Flight of Passage. If I wear sandals, I can ride Flight of Passage. That's how close the difference is there. So I think that's going to be my issue on this ride as well. However, I have been on the test vehicle and it seemed to fit fine. So as long as that test vehicle is similar to the ride vehicle itself, I believe I will be able to ride this. But that brings up another interesting point, and I know we have slightly differing opinions. Like, we're not going to get into a knockout, drag-out fight about this, but this is the first time that a Disney park in the United States is implementing mandatory lockers. Now, I don't think it's a big deal in terms of I'm not upset that they're welcoming lockers. I'm surprised, because if there's one thing that Disney wants you to do, it's go around. They want you to buy the $150 monorail set that's gigantic, and they want you to be able to put that bag on your ride vehicle so that it's not an inconvenience for you to buy something expensive. But now we are introducing this new thing that's going to be a muscle memory aspect for a lot of Disney fans who might not necessarily think about not buying the monorail at the beginning of the day and waiting until the end of the day. What are your thoughts on the introduction of the locker system?
As I've told you, and now everyone else can know, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think one thing Disney offers, and I believe they still offer this, please correct me if I'm wrong, but when I've been to Walt Disney World and Disneyland, if I buy something, they're either going to hold on to it for me or they're going to send it to my hotel for me. And if I have to pay a little bit more for that, great. If not, I know when I did it last time, it was part of staying on site is that they just sent it to my hotel for me, so I didn't have to carry it around. But I am all for the locker system because for me, there's something about that ride that means if something flies out of your pocket, somebody's going to get hurt. It's like Universal. There's a reason. The way that it was engineered is they did not engineer it for you to have a bunch of stuff in your pockets or have all this stuff. I do, however, actually, I talked to a friend yesterday whose sister is in Walt Disney World right now, and they were talking about Tron, and her sister is a diabetic, and she has to have her medication on her. So that is definitely something that I was like, maybe Disney should think of a way, because I haven't heard about this at Universal before, is for rides that are going to have a long wait, potentially, there needs to be an option when they get to the front of the ride to be able to store those things, whether they have it where it used to be. I remember as a kid going to Disneyland, you'd go on a big roller coaster. Instead of holding your backpack between your legs, we would just kind of toss it next to the gate where you exit, because you're getting off in the exact same spot. So I am all for the lockers for the average person to be like, here, I have all my crap. Let's dump it. And do we know? Oh, excuse me. I shouldn't have said crap. Let's do that again. Here's all
That's
your
fine.
stuff.
I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you get away with it. This is
because for me, I carry a lot of stuff, not important stuff, but there is stuff. But I think that, yeah, it's going to take some muscle memory, like you said, for people to do it. But I also feel Disney is going to have people there, especially when it opens, because this is so new, for people to remind them, like, hey, you need to put it in a locker. You need to put it in a locker. And yeah, it's going to be an inconvenience for people. But I feel like unless you absolutely have to have something on you, medication, things like that, you could be waiting in a long line, that it is something people are going to get used to, and they just feel like they need something to complain about right now.
So I'm going to say a couple of things, make a couple of points right now. First of all, your friend's sister should get a disability access pass.
She has one.
So that, yeah, she won't have to wait for more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get on that ride. So hopefully that will be something that they can adjust. Also, there is an accessible chair on every few vehicles. Now, they're saying that is getting a longer wait, because if somebody is, say, too big to ride on one of the motorcycles, they're letting them ride on one of those. And they're saying that is getting up to about a half hour sometimes in just these preliminary previews. I wonder if there is an emergency situation like that, if they will just let them have the medication and they'll put them on one of those seats instead of putting them in one of the motorcycles. I am not upset about it. Like I said, it just surprises me because I wouldn't think Disney would want any barriers at all to having somebody walk in at the beginning of the day, walk into the Emporium and spend $400 right away. Like, they want that to happen. Now, I also think it is a sign of things to come that Disney might be moving away from being super accessible, and that I would not like. If this is a sign of things to come, that they're going to be getting more and more like Universal, I think we already have Universal, and the people who like Disney like dark rides. They like rides that aren't all thrill rides. But if you've looked at the new stuff to come to Walt Disney World or is coming to Walt Disney World, we got Guardians and we got Tron, both of which are thrill rides, major thrill rides. We also got Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, but that gives some people motion sickness because of the 3D. So we are looking at Disney adding some rides that are less accessible than in the past. Now, while none of these individual rides bother me, it's the overall trend that is bothering me a little bit, that Disney has always been the place that is accessible, and I'm just worried that it's going to get further and further away from that. But now, we've talked about Tron. There's a lot wrong with Tomorrowland in both parks, so let's start talking about some of that. And we'll go to the big one. Whether you call it Autopia or you call it the Tomorrowland Speedway, it is high time to get rid of this attraction at both Walt Disney World and Disneyland. I know it's nostalgic. I know it gives kids the chance to drive a car. I get it. It takes up an unnecessarily large amount of space in both parks. It smells like garbage.
Yes.
It is uncomfortable for anybody over 5'6".
Yep.
This attraction says nothing about the future. Absolutely nothing about the future. I think it needs to go. I'm sorry. I know that might be controversial, but that's my opinion.
I agree. And you know what? If it isn't going to go, they need to make it so it's more in Disneyland. They could potentially, they need to make it like sponsored by some electric car company instead. Make it electric so it doesn't stink like go-karts. And if they could retheme it to Wreck-It Ralph, and they could call it part of Fantasyland instead of part of Tomorrowland, which unfortunately it's in a weird spot at Disneyland because you technically are in Tomorrowland, but you're at that weird cutoff where you walk through and you're kind of in Fantasyland, but you're also kind of in Tomorrowland. But in Walt Disney World, you're just kind of right in the stinking middle of everything. And it just, you can't retheme that to be future. I mean, because electric cars aren't even the future anymore. It's just something that, oh, at Disneyland, we could do this. But at Walt Disney World, there is no reason for that ride to be there.
And it is kind of like not in the middle of Tomorrowland, but it is in Tomorrowland in Walt Disney World. But it's so big that you hear the cars in Fantasyland. You smell the smell in Fantasyland. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, why don't you get it sponsored by Tesla and you can make them electric cars? And to those people, I want to say, Disney just dealt with and still is dealing with the Splash Mountain closure. They dodged a huge bullet with J.K. Rowling by not getting Harry Potter. You're going to start bringing Elon Musk into the parks? There's no way that is going to happen. They are just absolutely never going to do that because they don't want to be involved in drama, and they shouldn't want to be involved in drama. So I think that making this a Tesla ride is absolutely out of the question. Now, that would end up getting a lot of promotion on Twitter, but
yeah, exactly right.
But I do like your Wreck-It Ralph idea. I think that that would be fun to make it like Candy Crush, to incorporate an intellectual property. We know Disney does love to do that right now, and it gets more people into the parks. And that is an intellectual property that now has stood the test of time. People still like those movies. I just think that it takes up too much space. And if we could get 2 rides, Or if we could get Tron in that space in Disneyland, why wouldn't we do that instead of having one ride that really doesn't appeal to all that many people?
Exactly. Yeah. Ugh.
So we're in agreement on that. Then another ride that appears in both Walt Disney World and Disneyland is Space Mountain. Space Mountain in Disneyland, you're fine. Like Billy Joel would say, don't go changing to try to please me. I love you just the way you are. Disneyland, Space Mountain, you're fine. Yes. Space Mountain at Walt Disney World needs a new track. It Absolutely. Is way too hard on people's backs. It is not comfortable. And I don't want to be uncomfortable when I'm in the theme parks. Yes, it is a great ride. Yes, the one in Walt Disney World is the OG, and they don't have many OGs in Walt Disney World. But it needs a new track. Now that Tron exists, I hope we have the time to close down Space Mountain, give it a long, long refurbishment in Magic Kingdom.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. Like, Disneyland, we do have the better of the Space Mountains. It's definitely much more comfortable because riding the one in Magic Kingdom reminds me of riding the Matterhorn. And I don't like to ride the Matterhorn. It is brutal. It is brutal. I honestly thought I had a hairline fracture when I got home from that last one. I had a bruise, and that is how I feel of Space Mountain. And I agree. It doesn't need to be gone. It needs to be refurbished, and it could be so good if they refurbish it at Magic Kingdom.
And if they take the time to refurbish that, then there are two e-ticket attractions right there next to each other in Magic Kingdom, Tron and Space Mountain. Now you have a brand new e-ticket attraction all the way on the other side of the park in Tiana's Bayou Adventure. You also have Big Thunder Mountain there. In the middle, you have Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and Peter Pan. You're starting to spread out the crowds in Magic Kingdom, which is incredibly important. And I know Space Mountain has long lines right now, but I think it will spread out everybody. If you have Space Mountain sitting right next to Tron, this brand new thrill ride experience, Space Mountain is going to feel old really, really quick if you don't do something about it. So that's the only thing I have to say there. Another ride that technically exists at both Disneyland and Magic Kingdom, but is honestly a completely different experience in both, is Astro Orbiters. Why don't you talk about I think it's personally a waste of space in Disneyland. Why don't you talk about that version?
Yeah, they downgraded us when they updated Tomorrowland. It used to be up high and wonderful and great, and you had to go up to get on. But the Astro Orbiters now, they sit on the ground. They're right at the entrance, and it's meh. It's not great. They should have just put a statue there. If they were going to do something, put a moving statue that looked like that, like at the entrance of Tomorrowland, because Astro Orbiters in Disneyland is just such a bummer, in my opinion.
It reminds me a lot of Magic Carpets of Aladdin in Adventureland at Magic Kingdom, where it's not that it's a bad ride. It's that it's in a spot that completely ruins traffic. It completely ruins sight lines. It clogs up the middle, and it's for a ride that holds maybe a 5 to 10 minute wait. I do understand that's people, and they're getting people out of the parks, but where it's located, especially in Disneyland, when it's right off Main Street, USA, everything is so gorgeous and picturesque. And then there's just this carnival ride just stuck at the front of Tomorrowland.
I mean, if you get the right angle, it would be pretty cool. But the problem is on a very, very busy Disneyland day, and you have a lot of kiddos who are riding that, the line for that, it's clogging up that whole area. Like, it's so narrow, and it's just a mess.
I will say this about the version at Magic Kingdom. I hardly ever ride it. I actually think I've only done it once, just because it is such a hassle to get up there. You have to wait in line, then you have to take the elevator up, and then you wait in another line, and then you get up there. If it's July or August, it is hotter than the surface of the sun up there. If it is January or February, it is so cold that you cannot handle it because the wind's like whipping around when you're on the ride. I don't love this ride, but I'm happy that it is in Magic Kingdom. I think it is the opposite of Astro Orbiters in Disneyland, where I think it adds to the beauty of the land. I think it is fun to watch those vehicles spinning around. It's more of that kinetic energy of watching different layers of rides in a theme park land, and that is really, really exciting. But I don't like it as a ride, but I'm fine with it being there. I'm also exceptionally fine with a certain ride being there that isn't in Disneyland anymore, and this is my second favorite ride in all of Magic Kingdom. And if you could see Sarah's face right now, she is bitter and she is angry. And that is because I am going to mention the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover, which is just, it's an S-tier attraction. It is a premier attraction. It's not an e-ticket attraction. It never has more than maybe a 20-minute wait now that it's starting to be retro popular. Now that there are more Disney influencers who are letting people into the secret that this is such a great ride, I think that now it's become a little more popular, but the People Mover is great, and you don't have your People Mover anymore in Disneyland. So why don't you talk about A, letting people know why there is no longer a People Mover in Tomorrowland, B, if you think they'll ever get one again, or C, what the heck are they going to do with that track if they don't bring back the People Mover?
Oh man, yeah. So we unceremoniously got axed of the People Mover due to a little very short-lived ride called Rocket Rods. Rocket Rods was great in theory. It used the track from the People Mover and shot you around the same track and at a very fast pace. I rode it a couple times. It was always an incredibly long wait because it always broke down because you can't use a People Mover track for what they wanted to do. I mean, A for effort, F for how they actually did it. I know we've talked about this before, and I honestly think the only way we could get People Mover back is if they tore out the entire track because of how damaged it was by Rocket Rods and rebuild the whole thing. They would have to refurbish that entire area of track to put the People Mover back because otherwise nothing can run on that. Right now it's just an eyesore of these. I mean, it's not even on the map. If you look at a map of Disneyland, you don't even see all the eyesore of track that is above and all of the pillars and everything that are still there supporting this broken piece of history. So, I mean, either they need to do a huge refurb and put People Mover back, or they just need to tear it all out because it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous and it is ugly.
That's where we're going to leave things off on this particular conversation for today. Make sure you are following Sarah Says on Twitter at Sarah Says 84. In a few weeks, Sarah will be back to finish going over everything that needs to be fixed in both U.S. versions of Tomorrowland, including what the heck are they doing with the former location of Stitch's Great Escape in the Magic Kingdom. Until then, yesterday marked the official start of Epcot's International Flower and Garden Festival. You all know that I wouldn't miss the opening day of an Epcot festival. All this weekend, you can see vlogs from the first day of Flower and Garden on the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. Make sure that you are subscribed. Every time you watch a video, please like, comment. Let's interact and continue to build this community. I also mentioned my March charity drive. We are collecting gift cards for Dick's Sporting Goods and Five Below. The purpose is to purchase basketballs and soccer balls to drop off at Boys and Girls Club locations throughout the Orlando area. Please consider sending a $20 gift card to Orlando Ball Drop 1971 at gmail.com. That's Orlando Ball Drop 1971 at gmail.com. Last year, I used my pilgrimage on Ireland's National Famine Way to raise money and awareness in the fight against domestic violence. This year, we're trying to give kids the tools to live a healthier lifestyle. I personally know how important sports were to me when I was a kid. I didn't care about school at all, but sports gave me the motivation to stay academically eligible to play sports, to the point that I was able to go to a very good college. I think I was Dean's List every semester of college except for one. And yes, that one semester does still get on my nerves. But the point is, I never would have been able to go to college to have that kind of success if I didn't have the motivating factor of sports. I know my story is not unique in that respect, so please, Orlando Ball Drop 1971 at gmail.com. This has been episode 109 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. We will be back next week with Aesthetic Puppet. Not only is he one of the truly good guys in the Disney community, but he's going to be working on our ball collecting project as well. The plan is to talk to him about collecting balls and other topics surrounding the Orlando theme parks. That will be next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.